in many ways, I think you're explaining how you shifted from that one, version of you or mind, which was just don't think, autopilot, just go. I'm hungry, or I feel hungry, or I want to eat, or I'll get pleasure out of eating. I do it. Versus that other version, which is, let's think about this for a sec. Let's actually think about the implications and what this means and what's this is doing. And so I want to press on that a little bit. And I ask this with complete sensitivity. I also love food deeply. I've struggled with weight at times, as many members of my family who have as well. So this is a topic. I'm Italian, my heritage. Not that necessarily means we're the only ones that love food, but we
I'm
certainly love
Jewish.
it as much as
I'm
anybody
Jewish.
else. Right?
It's the
Yeah,
same
so
thing.
same,
Yeah.
right? Everybody really does. I think we all like to just claim it. But what I want to ask is, like, so you mentioned 45 years of struggle, and again, resonates deeply with me. How do you make sense of that? Of like some people listening to this that want to be cynical or want to be whatever, could be like, it took you 45 years to realize you just need to think about it and just realize that you should approach it differently. And I am fully aware of like how much is in that. So it's not an easy thing. It's not just a switch that you flip, but let's dig into that a little bit. Like, what was it over those 45 years? I'm sure at some point you thought like, I need to think about this. I need to figure out the right approach. So like, what was different that day versus those other 45 years?
Well, let me back up to start that. When I was about 5 years old, that's when I remember my mother always being so over conscious, or like, she would always be paying attention to what I was eating. Her fear was, what if my daughter gains weight and is fat and will not get married and have kids? Like, early on, she set me up to be thin, to look good. And I always, when I tell this story, I always say it with love. She did the best she could, and I don't fault her for it. But she would let my brother eat things I wasn't allowed to eat. And so I started to feel deprived and think like, well, if she's not going to let me eat what I want to eat, I'm going to do it in private. And I know for sure that's what kicked off my eating disorder, because that's part of binge eating or food addiction. It's like you're having an affair with food and you're sneaking and hiding and your life revolves around it. So I know that that's what happened to me. And then it became a pattern, it became a habit, it became my story that, you know what, I can't help myself. This is how I am. And it wasn't about blaming her. It was that I don't know how to get out of this crazy mess. Like, I'm successful in so many things in life, but I can't figure this one. I just don't have a handle on.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more I believed that that was my story, the more excuses I gave myself. And I said, all right, the only thing I can do is just find another diet, hope to be able to stick to that one forever so that the weight could come off and I wouldn't have to worry about this.
Can I ask
But
on that, Julie, just real quick?
yes,
In those moments where you were jumping to that next diet and like, okay, that's what I need to do now. Do you think there was a conscious part of you that knew like, this isn't going to work? Like, I'm never going to get through this. I'm just going to do this because it feels like what I should try. Or were you actually believing like, all right, this will be the one. This will be the one that
I
fits.
kind of, I
You did.
kind of
Yeah.
believed. I think
Yeah.
it was out of desperation and hope that, oh, Atkins, wow, I can eat as much, I mean, right now in the last 9 years, I'm vegan. So, but back then in 2010, when this happened, I was not. So, for all my life, wow, I could eat as much, meat and I don't know, cheese and all of these things. It sounded great. Like, I thought each time, wow, I can do this one. This one sounds good. This one doesn't sound like I'll be deprived. So I always knew that the deprivation is what would make me go off the rails.
Mm,
But anytime there was something new, I held on to it thinking, this sounds doable, until it wasn't,
mm, mm.
you know?
Yeah, the deprivation.
But getting back, oh, I
Yeah,
just want to
sorry.
say,
No,
getting
no,
back
keep
to
going.
what you were asking before is, so that for 45 years, yes, that was the story, that were the habits, the patterns, and I couldn't see from the outside in. I was just going around in this not so merry merry-go-round of dieting, binging. I mean, I could gain 9 pounds in 3 days. Like, that's how much food I would eat. Then things wouldn't fit and I'd have to go back on a diet. But there was something about that day in 2010, something just came over me where it really did come down to being petrified to get into bed one more night. It was as though I literally had no choice. I had to figure it out that day.
Mm.
So because I never had the conscious conversations in the past, getting to your question about if people were cynical, I didn't have the tools then. And there was something about this day that I said, just wait. And I started to say things like, if I want to get into bed tonight happy, what does that mean? Well, that means I need to be happy after everything I eat. Because if I'm happy after everything I eat, by definition, I'll be happy when I get into bed. All right, well, what does it mean to be happy after everything I eat? And then I started to just get more conscious. Well, I decided if diets have never worked long term, that means I can't be on a diet. Well, what does that mean? It means that there can't be any foods off limits. And that sounds scary. And I have to learn to eat my favorite foods in moderation. I've never done that. So all of this conscious conversation needed to take place for me to wake up and get my head out of the pantry or
Mm,
out of the freezer or out of Dunkin' Donuts or
mhm.
whatever. So that's the answer. It's like someone who doesn't struggle with this, like even my husband would think all these years, like, wait, like you really want to eat that like whole box of something? Even though I used to hide a lot of the stuff I
Right.
would do, when I tried to explain what I was going through, people who don't get it don't get it. And
Right.
it's understandable. Like I'm not an alcoholic. And if I never had another glass of wine, it would never affect me. Right. So it's whatever somebody turns to self-soothe. And for me, it was that.
Mm.